Let's have a really warm round of applause for Jim Renacci, U.S. Congressman and candidate for Governor of Ohio. All right?
All right, good job. Let's get her done.
All right.
Thank you all for having me. It's been an interesting few weeks, and I really enjoyed the travels. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. The star of that video is my 90-year-old mother. She'll be 91 this year, and again, she presents things well. She's this. It's when I see that video, it's tough. It's tough because she's when you get to 90, you never know what your next day is going to be. But anyhow, let's talk about. You saw why I ran for Congress. As you saw, I was a business guy. I've been in business now for almost 3 decades. If Washington wouldn't have stepped in and had taken my car dealership, I would have been here selling you a Chevy tonight. And that's really the key. I was growing businesses. I started with one. I ended up with over 60 businesses, employed over 3,000 people, created over 1,500 jobs, and I had the opportunity to do that throughout the state of Ohio. And Ohio was really where I believe, when I came here, was a land of opportunity. It was a place where someone could start at the age of 24 and live the American dream. And it gave me, Ohio gave me that opportunity. I've now been in Congress for 6.5 years. And it's an honor to be there. It's an honor to serve. What I found, though, is from a business standpoint is it's very difficult to get things done in Washington, as you know. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. But what I would tell you, the biggest frustration to me is I'm someone who gets things done. If you go back to my career, you're going to see the people that I employed. Not only did I employ over 3,000 people, I brought people with me. Some of the people who worked with me are now, they own their own business, because I'm a big believer in giving back, and I continue to do that during my years in business. When I got to Washington, what I found was a broken system made up of career politicians, which really gives it really makes it difficult for somebody to get things done, as you can tell. And we now have a situation where, as frustrating it is, Jim Renacci's the type of guy that really, I've stopped some bad things from happening. That's what I've been able to do over 6.5 years. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to do. But we haven't been able to do, I haven't personally been able to make the changes that I need to make. And that's when I said, Ohio can't wait. And we really need to look at making Ohio first again and making Ohio that place where I believe can be the land of opportunity. So I started looking at Ohio and I started to see some things that I didn't like. Many of you probably already know. 2016, the Columbus Dispatch reported that Ohio was the 5th most left state in the country. Now that's not left politically, that's left as getting in a car or getting in an airplane and leaving. We are losing population. We are losing opportunity. Also, there's statistics out there that show that Ohio has gone from 21st to 37th in job creation. So you might hear that we've had 460,000 jobs created since 2011, but we have gone from 21st to 37th. Today we import a lot of our electricity from other states. Now, a lot of people don't realize what that means, but let me explain it this way. If the other states are controlling what your electricity costs are, and especially if you're a business, they can start to drive those costs up. We have that as an issue. Our budget in Ohio, 47% of our budget in Ohio is federally funded dollars coming into the state. That's unheard of. So when somebody says, we need to get Washington out of our way, when those career politicians in Ohio say that, well, when you take 47% of the money from the federal government, you're going to have to expect to listen to the federal government. I want to change that. These are some of the things I want to change. You all know what we're #1 in, I assume. We are #1 in one thing. Anybody know what it is? Opioid overdose and addiction. #1. We're a Medicaid expansion state, yet we're #1 in opioid overdose and addiction. That's a problem. First off, I came out very early on. I'm on the budget committee in Washington. I could tell you what, Medicaid expansion is unsustainable. Absolutely unsustainable. That's a problem because someday Ohio is going to be stuck with this unsustainable funding because the federal government can't continue to pay it. Just can't continue to pay it. Today in Washington, we have Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and interest make up 70% of our expenditures. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, interest. 15% is military. That's 85%. That Medicaid number continues to grow and grow and grow. And there's, at some point in time, CBO estimates it'll be almost 33% of the total expenditure of the federal government. It's an unsustainable program. It's one of the reasons why I said that as governor, I will freeze enrollment, and then I will, we will not expand, and I'll repeal expanding Medicaid. Not because we shouldn't be taking care of the people that we need to. We should take care of the people. But Medicaid was really meant for the indigent, the elderly, and the children. It wasn't meant for an expanded population who really we should have work requirements for. And that's the other thing that I believe we need to push. We need to make sure that we have work requirements. So these are some of the things that I want to do. Let's talk about education. And again, I know I have a short time with you. I could be here for hours talking about things, but education, K through 12. Look, one of the problems is we don't need to educate our children about drugs. We need to educate our children about opportunities. One of the problems we have is today our children already know about drugs. And if you talk to them, and one of the things I've done, one of the things you'll find out about Jim Renacci is I'm a great listener. I'm going to listen to some of your questions later, but I'm a great listener. So I have now established an opioid panel of addicts who come to my office, and I talk to them. How did you get addicted? How did you get out of addiction? What caused it? And I started to listen and realize they're saying the same things that I thought were the problems. They already know about drugs. We can't educate them anymore. The problem is we have to make sure that starting in 6th grade, our children and grandchildren and those going to high school realize that there are other opportunities in drugs. There's also what we call the golden hour after 3 o'clock until almost 8 o'clock the following morning. What do we have there? We have kids that are coming home, their parents, if it's a single parent household, their mother or father's working, or even if it's a two-parent household, both of them are working, and what do they have? They have an opportunity to be alone, hang out with their friends, and there's the golden hour. We have to make sure that time is filled with opportunities. I mean, I look back at VOTEC. This is another big thing. I'm going to talk about K through 12. I was at a high school the other day. They told me that they have 1,300 students going to that high school. And out of those 1,300, only 27 go to VOTEC. Now think about that. Do we really believe that 1,273 students should be college-bound in our schools? Absolutely not. But the other thing we have to do is we have to promote those opportunities. We have to promote the opportunities of what's out there. I have a friend who never went to college. He got his plumbing certificate. He got his master plumbership. He started his own business. He became a contractor. And in the end, he just sold his business, and now he has a house in Florida with a boat. Never went to college. We have to be able to show our children early on opportunities. We have to give them that pathway. We have to have mentorship programs. These are things we need to do, and then we need to reward our K through 12 schools for making sure that our kids come out and graduate with a skill set, not a test set. Too many times we are worried about this test grade or this. There are some really good students who would have really good skill sets, but we worry too much about making sure they pass and get 90% on a math test. We have to make sure they get a skill set when they leave. And again, when we go to college, we basically have to look at our higher education as well. We have to take a look at the cost of higher education. We're going to have to start looking at the professors and the adjunct professors. Look, there are not enough students anymore. I just told you the population is not growing in Ohio anymore. People are leaving. Last year, we were the 5th most left state. I repeat that again because that's an important statistic. And yet, our colleges are continuing. We're not losing colleges, but all those colleges are trying to bring students in. And the problem is there's just not enough students anymore. And at some point in time, we're going to have to share that overhead. And we're going to have to share that by talking and bringing people together. It's the same with all our taxing jurisdictions. You heard me on the video say, we have to look at our tax system. I'm a CPA. We have one of the most complicated tax systems in the country in Ohio. I had a construction company. We had to file a tax report with 68 different cities Businesses don't want to stay when things are complicated. When businesses can go to another state and make it less complicated, they're going to leave. The regulatory climate. You'll hear our House members and Senate members say, we have eliminated a whole bunch of regulations. Well, when I travel the state, I'm hearing businesses say, we need to reduce our regulatory climate because otherwise I'm going to go and incorporate in Pennsylvania or Kentucky or Indiana, and that's what people are doing. So, these are just pretty simple things. Now, when it comes to businesses, let's face it, jobs and the economy. How do we fix a lot of things? We got to grow the economy, and we got to grow the jobs. We don't need to bring businesses from out of state. What we need to do, and I've said this all along, we need to go to the businesses that are already here. We need to talk to them. What's causing them not to be able to grow? What's slowing them down? What's not giving them the opportunity to increase employment? And then what we have to do, this is pretty simple stuff. What we have to do is we have to change it. And we have to have the will to change it. Look, nothing's going to be easy. I can tell you nothing will ever be easy. But I will also tell you this. If we continue to elect career politicians, if we continue to elect those politicians who would rather worry about their next election instead of the next generation, we're going to continue to have the same problems we have today. One thing I've learned in Washington, the biggest problem there is we continue to elect career politicians who continue to do the same thing. And I look back, and if you take a look at the House of Representatives, or Republicans in the House of Representatives, there's a statistic, 70% of the Republican members of the House of Representatives, because you'll say, well, we got to get rid of them all. 70% of them have only been there less than 7 years. It's the 30%ers that we have to be worried about. It's the people that are around a long, long time. I always tell people, I now have 28 years of business experience, and when I go to Washington, that 28 years, before I went to Washington, that 28 years, I get no credit for. That's a problem. I built a tax model. I'll give you an example. And I'll tell you, this was kind of a turning point for me. I built a tax model using my 28 years experience. Again, CPA, practiced before the IRS. I have a couple tax attorneys in my office. We built a really good model. That model was getting some support from Democrats. It was getting some support from Republicans. It was getting support from economists. It's on my website, by the way, my congressional website. And all of a sudden, I go up to a Republican that's been around for 24 years, and you know what he says to me? Renacci, I've been here 24 years. You've been here 5. Do you really think we're going to listen to you? That was the checkoff point that told me it's really time for me to come back home. Ohio was the land of opportunity for me 34 years ago. I believe it still can be the land of opportunity. We have some great assets here. We have the oil and gas opportunity. We have to get that severance tax out of the way. We have to take our assets that we have here in Ohio and build from those assets. We have to eliminate our liabilities. None of this is rocket science, folks. This is the business model. You have to be able to take your assets and use them and reduce your liabilities. We need to be able to do that. I decided to jump in a race because, again, the 3 opponents I have are all career politicians, 72 years worth of career politics among the other 3. And I tell people, if you're happy with where the state is today, you probably don't want to elect me or talk to me, because I'm going to change the direction of the state, because I do not want to be going from 21st to 37th. I don't want to be the 5th most left state in the country. Here's what I want. I want Ohio to be first in everything, except I do not want Ohio to be the first in opioid overdose and addiction. So at this point in time, I'd love to take some questions from you, but I appreciate you allowing me to be here.
All right, so if you have a question, raise your hand, and I'll come on by and just give your name, and then try to keep it short and concise.
Yeah, Jim, Doug Rice here. I'm just curious, do you feel that you failed in Washington or you succeeded in Washington?
Well, first off, when I first ran, I told everybody, the first question they've asked me, remember the days, how many years you're going to be there? I used to say 8 to 10 years, so I'm going to be there 8 years. So I think I've succeeded in going in there, seeing what the problems are, And I also think that I've succeeded in stopping some bad things. Let me give you an example. Everybody remembers Lois Lerner. Last year, I got 5 bills passed out of the House of Representatives, passed by the Senate, and then signed by the President. Here's what the problem is, though. When you do a bill in Washington, you do all the work, and then leadership grabs it, takes it up into one of their big bills, and it gets passed, and they say, well, you can take credit for it. Well, I have 5 of those. One of them is if somebody in the IRS uses their position to go after people, for political purposes, they should be fired. Lois Lerner was one of those people. Believe it or not, there was nothing that would allow the IRS to fire Lois Lerner. There now is a law that I got passed by the House, the Senate, and the President that would fire anybody that ever did what Lois Lerner did a couple years back.
All right. All right. Who else has a question? See a hand raised? There we go. Over here. Come on down.
Tom Johnson. I have a question. You grew up in Western Pennsylvania. Steelers or Browns?
So I'm going to tell you the answer.
I've got an orange tie.
Yeah, right there.
Tie.
But here's what happened. I look, and here's what you're always going to hear from Jim Renacci. I'm never going to lie to you. So I was standing, when I first ran for Congress, I was down in the city of Canton. I was trying to get the endorsement of the firefighters because I was a firefighter. And I'll never forget, there was a room probably with 3 or 4 times the amount of people here, all firefighters from all Stark County. And as I did my speech, just like I did, the guy in the front stands up. He's about 240, got a dog pound hat on, and he says, I got one question for you. I said, what's that? He goes, are you a Steelers fan or a Browns fan? Now remember, this is my first election, so I'm sitting there thinking, and it's like the world's spinning, but my answer was, never lie. And I said, I'm a Steelers fan. And he says, you know what? I'm going to vote for you because you didn't lie and I knew you were. So.
On a serious note, during the last election, presidential, Governor Kasich came out and continued to talk about the rainy day fund that we have in Columbus. Not moving that $2 billion out of the state coffers, hoarding cash, has really hurt government agencies at the cities, at the township level. We've had to pass taxes for roads. We had to have taxes for libraries. We've had to have additional taxes for schools. What's your position on the rainy day fund that sits in a bank in Columbus?
Well, the rainy day fund is it's the citizens of Ohio's money. So, I mean, I don't think we should just spend it inappropriately. I think it's good to have a rainy day fund. You can't not have a rainy day fund, but at the same time, I think you have to use it when you need to use it, and there are times when you use it, and there are times when you don't use it. My biggest problem today is, I do believe, and if you look at my website, you'll find that the first thing that I'm going to do as governor is freeze expenses. All right? I do believe that our expenditures are rising at such a rate in Columbus that we have to at least freeze them. And then, again, in the business world, when I was in business, by the way, you might not know this, but my history was I had 60 businesses. They weren't all good businesses. They were all pretty bad businesses. When I went in, they were normally in trouble. First thing you do is you freeze your expenses. You let all the bad stuff get squeezed out. Because look, I've talked to every state senator and every state rep. I've made phone calls to every one of them. They're telling me that there's some things that can be squeezed out. We need to get that squeezed out. At the same time, we need to be able to use that money wisely. Our cities and our counties and our townships, I tell everybody, those are, when business is going to come here, or when business think about coming here, they don't come here and look at the state. They come here and look at the towns and the communities. So the governor and the state has to be partners with the cities and the counties and the townships. And and for me, I need to make sure that we're working together, not just taking from one side, but working together.
All right. We got a question over here.
Yeah, hi, Jim. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. I'm a constituent of yours in the 16th Congressional District, and I'd like to know why you won't have a town hall meeting for your own district constituents, but you come to a different congressional district and have a public meeting here.
Yeah, well, actually, this is my district. Portage County is my district. And so you are now in a town hall in my district, so welcome. You can shake your head, but this is my district. So thank you for being here. The other thing is that I have plenty of town halls. And you know what else I have? I have teletown halls, and I invite people to come to my office all the time. Last week, 3 or 4 people said, you don't have a town hall? Come to my office. You have an opportunity to speak to me one-on-one. You know what they say? I don't want to speak to you one-on-one. Well, what do you want? Do you want to talk to me one-on-one? Or do you want to stand in a group and scream? Because I'd rather just talk to you one-on-one and hear from you. So people have come. I've had people that disagree with me come to my office. So I actually think I do a little better than put in a room full of people. I give them all kind of opportunities. But I thank you for being here. This is a town hall in my district. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right, got a question?
13th Congressional District?
No, we have three. We have three congressmen. We have 3 congressmen: Dave Joyce, Tim Ryan, and Jim Renacci. This is a big part of Portage. Is his district. It is. Look at the map.
Portage County is in the 16th district.
I Googled this address, said it's in, the Google's a very liberal organization.
Now, it is kind of interesting that I'm standing in a town hall and I have a guy say, how come you don't have town halls? That's a great question.
I know this is a big open-ended question, and I guess the reason why I might be bringing this up is I'm on a school board, local school board, and I probably don't have to tell you about public education, et cetera, the property tax and so on. And briefly, do you see any way as governor you could get a handle on all of this, or just, again, I know you could probably go on for a couple of hours, but just kind of briefly tell me what your plan is. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I think what I'm telling you is we have to work together with the schools. We have to reward schools that end up with skill sets. That's my short answer. We have to be able to work together. At the same time, I would actually like, and you hear this from me all the time, I like to get things back to the local level. As close as I can get to the local level, better. I love what Wisconsin's doing. Look, individual states, what's great about having individual states do individual things is we get to see opportunities for what works and what doesn't work. Wisconsin is pushing all their dollars back to the local school districts. I actually like that idea. But what's even great, I get to see how it works with Wisconsin. What I really would like to do is make sure that the school districts get rewarded for making sure that our children graduate with a skill set drug-free. Remember, I added drug-free as well, because we have to make sure. I know that there are many teachers that I'm very close with. Thank you. There are many teachers that I'm close with that say it's the parents' problem. But the truth of it is, it's all of our problems. And I think parents and the schools and the teachers and the school districts all have to work together.
Okay, all right, got another question here?
There are a lot of dollars going to aliens, and there is also disabled people that are on a level of intermediate care facility that is being not respected by the current governor and the Disability Rights Ohio. They're about to close off the funding to intermediate care facilities. Our youngest son is at the 8th person in the entire world dying of a rare disease at this intermediate care facility level. And if that is taken away, which is in the process right now with this lawsuit going on, then there are a lot of people throughout Ohio that will go through the same thing that Pennsylvania's representatives removed from them. The care that they need is 24/7 by doctors and all of those people. These are real legitimate people with real legitimate needs. What will you do for them?
Well, just so you know, and if you look at my history, you're going to see that I was in the nursing home industry and the intermediate care industry for almost 18 years of my career. So I owned and operated 23 facilities throughout the state. I do understand the need. I also took care of the development of disabled. I also had facilities for development disabled. So I do understand the need. And that's why I told you, the safety net is important. Medicaid is important to take care of the elderly, the indigent, and the children. We have to be able to take care of those levels. At the same time, we have to look at the dollars that are being spent for those that we have to put work requirements on, but we just can't keep spending. But I am a big supporter of the elderly, indigent, and the children, which is where Medicaid really started and what the program was all about.
Okay, got a question here?
I'm Donna Lillo. Are you a member of the Freedom Caucus?
I am not a member of the Freedom Caucus. I'm a member of the 16th District Caucus. I will tell you this, that I have a lot of friends on the Freedom Caucus. Jim Jordan's a friend of mine as well. But I also believe, here's the one thing. In the 16th District, I don't think you want me voting based on what 40 people, what 80% of 40 people decide. I think you want me voting on what 51% of the 16th District want. So I do have a lot of close friends with the Freedom Caucus. You'll see my voting record is very similar in many ways, because I also believe we have to stop the spending. We've got to have smaller government. But here's a statistic you can look at, because everybody says, well, how is your voting? By the way, you have all these different voting. You have the Heritage, and you have the Freedom Works, and you have all this. Isn't it amazing? I think I have a 97%. I don't pay attention to it, but somebody told me I had a 97% with Freedom Works, and I think I got a 90 or 60. But if you took a look at my average with Heritage, I think I have a 68 or 69%, and Jim Jordan has a 93%. But isn't it amazing that if you go back over the last 3 cycles, I voted 97% with Jim Jordan, I voted 93% with Jim Jordan, and I voted 91% with Jim Jordan. So, as Ronald Reagan said, whenever you're voting at least 80%, we should be happy. But I'm not a member of the Freedom Caucus.
Okay, got a question here?
Good evening, Mr. Renacci. I'm
Hey.
also a constituent of yours. My name's Matt. I live in Hinckley,
Yeah.
out in Medina County. My question is actually about my grandpa. He's been in and out of nursing homes for the past year or so. He's been in declining health and all that, and he's been bouncing back and forth between nursing homes and hospitals. And he's actually covered under the Medicaid expansion. He was able to get the care he needed with underneath that, and honestly, that is the reason he's still alive today. And I know when they were going through, when the House was going through all those deliberations and that on the bill you guys were working on, I was trying my best to follow it as carefully as I could. And from what I saw, the final bill included, it got rid of a lot of the Medicaid expansion, and it also had a lot of capital gains tax cuts, which predominantly affect wealthy Americans, like very wealthy Americans. And I guess my question was, why do you think it's okay that we should take health care away from people like my grandfather who need it to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy?
He's on Medicare.
Well, first off, I don't know how old your grandfather is. I would have to know all the details. I was in that industry. If he is Medicaid, if he is elderly and Medicaid and indigent, he's covered by Medicaid. If he's over 65, he's covered by Medicare. So we already have programs that cover him. So you would have to tell me why he doesn't meet those requirements. That's the key, because right now, and I was in the industry for almost 20 years, I'd love to hear how old is your grandfather, by the way?
He's 75.
75. So if he's 75, he's got Medicare, and he's got a backup of Medicaid. He's got those coverage already. So I don't know how Medicaid expansion helped him. I'd love for you to tell me that. Maybe not now, but after we're done here.
I don't know every last detail. I know my grandmother's home is covered under the expansion.
Well, I'm telling you that if he's over 65, he's got Medicare, and if he's indigent and elderly with no money, he's got Medicaid, he's covered. So I would really have to figure out why he would not be covered.
Well, I guess to follow up with that, even in cases not like my grandfather's, people who are maybe not over 65, but still need that health care and can't afford it otherwise, why do you feel it's okay to take that health care away just to pay for?
Are you talking about Medicaid?
Yes.
It's unsustainable. So at some point in time, you're going to be 65. At this pace, we're not going to have enough money. So I'm worried, not only about your grandfather, but I'm worried about the next generation, and the generation after that, and the generation after that. We have to start making decisions based on making sure that we're doing right for the next generation, not just the current generation.
Okay. Time for one more question, please. Hank Dunkel gets the last question here.
Hank Dunkel, as a governor, what can you do to attract energy being produced in this state? You talked about energy coming into this state. I think we closed down a lot of the coal plants. I know I've been in some parts where it's just they're all gone. So can you stimulate that, or is there something the governor can do?
So as governor, I'm going to tell you, I'm a believer in all the above, but I'm going to also a believer in that we tap into our greatest asset, which is gas and natural gas, and we should tap into that, and we should make it a part of our all of the above package. You also have coal. We got to continue with coal. We also have wind and solar and water and all those other things. We have to have all of the above. What I don't believe in, and one of my opponents supported this when he was in the House as Speaker, I don't believe we should mandate reusables, and I think that's a problem. If we're going to mandate reusables, that's a problem. I think we should be open to all of the above and be competitive. So thank you.
You want to make a closing statement?
Yeah. So in closing, I really do want to thank you for being here tonight. It's great to see. This is what really is all about. This is what it's all about. You get to know the person. So I hope you got to know a little bit more about me. Make sure you take a look at RenacciForOhioFirst.com. That's my website, RenacciForOhioFirst.com. That'll give you some more positions of mine, some of the things we didn't touch on, but I'll just go over quickly. I do not support sanctuary cities, and I think that's a big issue. You'll see that. But you'll also see some of the programs and some of the pieces. I really do want to I think the only way, the federal government is out of control. And the one gentleman here was talking about federal government programs. Look, you heard what I'm saying. We're spending $3.5 trillion a year. We're not bringing in that kind of revenue, even though we have the maximum. We will have the highest treasury revenues ever. And yet we are spending too much money. We have to be able to make sure that Ohio prepares for this federal debacle which is coming. And that's why, as governor, I would promise you this: I'll get up every day and make sure I think about making Ohio first, about making sure that Ohio is not number 37th, but number 1 in job creation. And again, as I started, if you like the way Ohio is going today, there are 3 opponents I'm running against who have been part of the political machine for the last 72 years. You probably want to go look at them, because they're the ones that put us here. Those 3 have had a chance, whether it's been a lieutenant governor, whether it's been Speaker of the House. They've all had their opportunity. What we have to do as Americans is start realizing that when we have individuals who their whole careers, when they're political politicians, and they're getting up every day and worrying about the next election, that's where we end up in Washington, and that's where we end up in Ohio. I'm not a career politician. I'm a career businessman. I'll bring those principles with you, with that office, and I thank you for having me tonight.
Appreciate it. Thank you.